Today we're going to be eating 10,000 calories, but we're also going to be doing it from primarily meals, snacks, treats that shift workers often have at work and at home, particularly those in healthcare. So we're pulling together some often maybe slightly better options that healthcare workers could have in the morning and throughout their day, compared to some maybe not so good options that I often see them having that leave them feeling still quite hungry and highly dense in calories. Educational, but fun, I know. How dull. Bear with me as we go through 10,000 plus calories for today. That was very expensive. And well, we've got more than 10,000 calories worth in there. A good mix of breakfast, lunch, dessert, dinner on the way home, and other snack options to enjoy. All right, well, that is at least 10,000 calories carried home. That itself was pretty much the workout for today. Still going to get that packed away, and then tomorrow we will get to it. We are about to put some client calls. It's 6:30 in the morning, but before we do that, we're just going to weigh ourselves to start this day, just to get a good benchmark start point. So just weighed myself, and I am 96.4 kilos. Remember that number, it'll be on screen, and we'll think about it later in the day. We are starting with meal number one. So for the maybe not so good options, we've got in some, hello Atlas. Atlas. This is my newfound Atlas. So for meal option number one, we've got pain au chocolat, and also another classic common item, a croissant. Whites aren't necessarily the best options. They tend not to feel you feeling that full, but actually they're typically very calorie dense, and we'll get to the calories in a minute. Creamy banana pudding or overnight oats option, about 230 calories for this whole pot. Possibly some of the calories between one. I suspect the croissant will be slightly more, but you're going to be feeling much more full and probably have a better source of energy from this versus the pastries. From a drinks perspective, it's also pretty common that I see people either mainlining coffee or often picking up things like these kind of smoothies. So this one's called Brain Food. It's all in the marketing. It's banana, apple, guava, and coconut in a smoothie. And per 100 ml, it is roughly 57 calories. This is a 750 ml bottle. So quick math, we're going to be looking at about 350 calories if I consume all this, which for today's purposes of hitting 10,000 calories, I'm going to have to do. Let's see what it comes in at. I quite like macro factor. We're going to use that for today. Okay, so that's 236 calories in that. This entire bottle, before I've actually added the croissant yet, so let's do that. That's another 340 with this. And when we add this pain au chocolat, either one of these is about 350 calories, coupled with, if you had something like this, probably another 57. Now, the option I haven't done this morning, which I know some of you will have done, is get maybe quite a large coffee or milky coffee from Starbucks, etc. on the way into work. That itself, depending on how much sugar is in it and the options you go for, may again add another 200 calories, depending on what that may be. So if you're having a typical grab and go breakfast, one of these options plus a milky drink or half of this is pretty much going to get you to sort of about the 500 calorie mark, which depending on your size may or may not be a pressure issue. But what I would say is you will also probably not feel particularly full after having just one of these and some of that or a coffee. Whereas we're probably going to feel a lot more fullness for eating something like this. So I would probably recommend making your own, but this does look pretty good. Boom. That's breakfast done in the bag. I've consumed 1,371 calories between a maybe slightly better overnight oats option, 2 different pastries, and chugging this Brain Food super smoothie, which is pretty sugary and probably isn't much brain food, I'll be honest. Back to work and life admin, and I'll probably be having a mid-morning snack. I'm also going to train this afternoon, so it'll be a very well-fueled training session. I'll likely end up taking one of the other drinks that I've got to training, as well as maybe a snack to have in the car there or something. I don't drink tea, but I know a lot of healthcare workers and shift workers do. So to simulate that, I'm instead going to be having some iced lattes, which is 66 calories per 100 ml. If you think over the course of the day, if you're having 3, 4, 5, 6 teas, yes, you might just be having a splash, but again, it all just adds up. We're getting to, let's say we've imaginarily been at work for about 2 or 3 hours at this point. So I tell you, I have been working for about 2.5 hours now. It's just before 9 a.m. in the morning. And you've got a little peckish, you've maybe skipped breakfast, and so you're looking for something. So, options. Well, we've gone for a honey and ginger kefir drink It supposedly serves two, and half of this is about 175 calories. This could be a really good option. Moderate low in calories obviously is one of your 5 a day, and yeah, generally a good source of energy. So probably a better option. Mid option, and then an option that many of you end up going to is things like these snacky M&S bites that may well be left in the staff area or just available to just grab at some point. And I often see things like these in food diaries for earlier in the day. So let's go for the apple to start with. Apple complete, that was probably somewhere around the 60 to 100 calorie mark, maybe 80, let's say. I'll look total afterwards. That leads me on to this honey and ginger kefir drink. It says source of calcium, source of protein. Technically true, but not necessarily a big selling point for it. In reality, one whole bottle of this has 12 grams of protein and 35 grams of sugar. Not really that much protein. Necessarily wouldn't be having it as a protein drink. You'd be better off, to be honest, for the calories you'd have from this, having something else instead. This entire bottle will be 350 calories in this one thing. It's pretty tasty. I'll give it that. It's quite thick. Not very chuggable. 350 calories. 80 calories. That leads us on to blonde fudge bites. So that's gonna be 600 calories in this bag alone, which is pretty energy dense and primarily sugar and fat. If you're someone who's trying to eat to a calorie weight loss goal and be in a calorie deficit, particularly someone who's maybe a smaller human, this is going to take up quite a large chunk of your calories for the day. So really is not the best option to be snacking on, particularly if you're trying to lose weight. These are pretty tasty. I think there's about 10 of them in the entire bag in total. 2.5 of these is 150 calories. You can see how easy it would be to just grab and go with these. Also, I think the hardest thing about the 10,000 calorie challenge today isn't the actual food volume for me. It's probably going to be all the chewing. There's a lot of chewing. Okay, so before I eat the last two, what's going to tell it is just how easy it is to get to 2,000 calories already. Okay, so we've hit mid-morning and we've maybe still missed breakfast. We've not had a chance to have something already, but we've spotted some nice donuts that someone's brought in, that's on the side. Maybe a patient has, a client, or they're just leftovers from the day before. So we go grab maybe one of these donuts. Again, these are probably about 200 calories each. I think the pack says it's about 840 calories for the whole pack of 4. And these will give you a nice little sugar hit for about 5 seconds. You wouldn't necessarily feel any fullness from them. And again, they're very calorie dense. So let's get to it. That is 4 donuts crushed, if I may say so. I think that brings me to over 3,000 calories already for today, and we're running at 11 a.m. Instead of the donuts, what could have been a better option might have been something like a Greek yogurt. Now, they're not always as portable, but certainly having a little bit of Greek yogurt in a small Tupperware that you have, if you've got somewhere safe to store it at work, in a fridge, for example, clearly labeled, then that can be another great backup option for mid-morning if you are really hungry. Similarly, you can get things like the sort of skyr pouches or Greek yogurt pouches and protein pouches, which can also be really good backups that you could take out of the fridge in the morning, have in your bag or somewhere nearby at work that you can also consume quite quickly. Per serving, roughly 125 grams would be 120 calories, 11 grams of protein. That's the Greek yogurt down. Now, that was much more difficult to consume. Very different to the donuts. It's going to be much harder probably to eat the next meal. I'm going to have a little bit of a break before I get into the next bits of food because this is just so filling and thick. Greek yogurt, particularly higher quality stuff, can be great. Okay, it's almost lunchtime. I'm getting pretty peckish. And I'm also pretty thirsty, probably because of the volume of food that I've consumed so far already, just under 4,000 calories. So I'm now on to a nice juice from M&S. So this is their still raspberry lemonade, which I'm going to consume now. Okay, I've just nipped to the gym and now we are back for our main lunch. It's a little bit late in the day. It's actually about 1:30 at the moment. So, you know, resembles what might be lunchtime for some of you. I know quite often lunchtime can just be crammed into 2 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever you have available, sometimes nothing. And so what we're doing here is I've ranked some lunch options from maybe good to not so good. Of course, this all depends on your calorie goals and how much you're trying to fuel by. However, in part, you could also say it's ranked in terms of just calories from lowest to generally high. So we'll get into it. I need to get a fork as this is a salad and we'll get to it. Okay, so we are starting out with a classic tuna niçoise. salad with a classic French dressing. This is a single serving and approximately 310 calories. That's pretty good. Like, it's high in protein and a pretty solid lunch all around. You've got egg, you've got tuna, beans and pulses, as well as some veg in there. So yeah, it's a pretty solid option. Particularly if you're looking at weight loss, this is a great option, which you can also accessorize with a snack or something else. High scores for taste, definitely a nice salad. I wouldn't be doing it right if I didn't also have a fizzy drink. So I've gone for just the classic Coke, full sugar version, as I know some of you still consume. I know lots of you now have switched to zero sugar. Great. But I know a lot of you still have full fat sugar, as we call it in the UK, which this can is approximately 140 calories and about 35 grams of sugar, which I'm definitely going to feel after this. So I'll drink that whilst we work our way through the rest of this. Okay, so tuna salad down, that was 310 calories in the bank. The next thing we're moving on to is a roast chicken and sweet corn sandwich. Not a bad option. About 26 grams of protein in this whole pack and about 428 calories for the pack. So if you're on a really small calorie diet, let's say you're looking at the lower 1,300s, 1,400s, this is definitely on the larger size, or it might just be the only thing you have for your lunch potentially, depending on the calories you're having around the day. If you're someone who's targeting more like 2,000, then you might be able to accessorize with something else, just depending on, okay, again, what's across the rest of your day. So not a bad option, pretty filling, will help you stay full, but be mindful of calories across the board. It's also relatively quick and easy to eat and fairly portable. You don't have to heat it up. And so if you've got 5 minutes to eat something, this isn't a bad option. Okay, so roast chicken sandwich done. Next, hoisin duck wrap. Another classic with no mayo, it says specifically on the front. It's very strongly worded about that. So this whole thing is 416 calories. From a macros perspective, we're looking at about 20.8 grams of protein. So maybe not as good macro ratio as the sandwich, but certainly not a bad option. Fairly filling, will help keep you full for the afternoon if you get a chance. Relatively quick to eat as well, requires no cutlery or heating up. I think we are also about over 5,000 calories at this point so far today. Something I often see is people getting pork pies. Not as common maybe as they used to be. The miniature pork pies are quite often something I see where someone's bought a multi-pack. And really the best way I could describe some of the miniature pork pies in particular is they pretty much are just lumps of fat. Very little protein in them, primarily just fat. So they're very energy dense. Pork pies probably wouldn't be on my recommended list. Very easy to get a lot of calories in without really feeling much, but they are quite tasty. Okay, so that is a British Melbourne Mopo pie. That is 1,200 calories, also sunk. I have to be honest, that was a bit of a struggle to get through. Very dense, very fat heavy. At this stage of the day, yeah, not the easiest. Okay team, we are down to our last big push for the day. So at this point, I'm about 7,000 calories roughly, I think, maybe just under that into the day. What I consumed, which I unfortunately did not get on camera, was me consuming this entire Belgian chocolate milkshake. 700-ish calories, very tasty, went down very easily. It's really common to see people having a chocolate milkshake as kind of like a mid-work treat or drink. Obviously not having it in this volume, but obviously bear in mind the calorie volume that are in these kind of drinks, as they are primarily sugar and fat. What we also have coming up is a chicken tikka masala ready meal. This is 632 calories for this meal. It smells good, looks pretty good. A decent sized meal. It's not gigantic. And if you just had this alone, actually it's relatively moderate, I would say. Macros certainly aren't terrible. 28 grams of fat, 32 grams of protein, 58 grams of carbs, 10 grams of sugar. So certainly a pretty solid option, I would say, as a good meal. And obviously, if you're someone who's on a really low calorie target, you're a smaller human perhaps, then this is still quite a large proportion of your total intake for a day potentially. So having all this might not be the best option, but if you're a larger human on a calorie target, this might still be a fairly solid dinner option for you at a push. Obviously, it's a ready meal. If you can make your own from scratch, fantastic, but this certainly doesn't seem like a too bad an option. The other thing we'll be going through is a chicken arrabbiata, which is 44 grams of protein and 38 grams of carbs, and in total is 432 calories in this option. So lower calorie option, certainly well fueled, good macros again as well, relatively low in sugar, some fat, and a good amount of carbs and protein. So also a very good option. Again, technically a ready meal, but composition still looks fairly good, tastes and smells fairly good too. So at a push, two fairly good options to be having as a last resort. And obviously you could go overboard and accessorize, particularly the curry then with naan breads, perhaps some starters that can quickly take that 600 calories to being well over 1,000 if you're not careful. So particularly with curries, often it's being mindful about the extras. Similarly with the chicken arrabbiata, you could easily end up accessorizing this by having, let's say, a garlic bread on the side, which might add another 300-400 calories, possibly more, depending on the composition of it. Good bases, but be mindful of the extras. Once or three of those, we get into our last two things of the day. So we actually only need to eat this entire tiramisu. So this entire tiramisu is around 1,400 calories, or just under, I think. And we also have some M&S milk chocolate cookies. Now we only actually need to eat two of these if we eat the rest of this. So we'll get to that point at the end. These cookies are delicious. What I would say is these are very calorie dense. One cookie is 351 calories. That is a very large amount of calories for one moderate sized cookie. And it's not going to leave you feeling very full, but has a huge calorie impact. And so if you're someone who's maybe thinking, oh, I'll just have one cookie a day or one or two cookies a day, but you're struggling to lose weight, looking at the cookie intake could seriously be worth considering, particularly if you are working in healthcare, you're snacking on other bits that you've seen, for example, throughout today, and also having a dessert when you get home. You know, you could be adding 500-600 calories or more potentially in just sweets and treats alone easily across your day. Let's get to it. The last sort of 3,000 or so calories for today to enjoy. If you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching. I hope it's been interesting, possibly slightly educational for you and vaguely entertaining. Reflections from my side are probably that actually it's been moderately easy, I would say, to get to this many calories. Lunchtime was definitely the hardest. I think because the lunchtime meals were probably sort of the most green and fiber dense. They were particularly tough to get down in that kind of volume. I had a pretty rough midday slump. But the breakfast options, hello dog, and some of the other options throughout today have made it actually pretty easy. Something like the donuts, for example, these cookies, I suspect this tiramisu will go down without any effort whatsoever. Minimal chewing, quite light and cold, will be quite easy. So it's really, as a highlight, very easy to reach 10,000 calories without trying too hard. And obviously that's not still realistic to your day-to-day. What I would say is it's very easy to get to 2 or even 3,000 calories without much forethought. And if you're someone who's trying to lose weight and you're working in healthcare, dealing with all the stresses and challenges, or even you just work a busy and stressful job, trying to fit in good nutrition around that can be really tough. And if you're not being mindful of the choices that you're making, it can be very easy to end up snacking, having these little extras here and there, as well as not so great main meal choices that end up taking you into the high thousands and well beyond your maintenance and selling into a surplus calories for your body weight. Okay, and just like that, 632 calories demolished. That went down very easily, very creamy. That's a thumbs up. This isn't a food review challenge, but yeah, would recommend. Okay, time for chicken arrabbiata. This will probably be less easy to consume. It's just going to be able to be maybe slightly less tasty than a very creamy chicken tikka masala. But it looks pretty solid. Good amount of protein, as we said, 44 grams. That was the chicken arrabbiata. Also went down very easily, as you can see. So all that remains, 2 M&S cookies and this entire tiramisu, which also, I can tell you from experience, will be quite easy for me to consume. I'm going to eat the 2 cookies now, and I promise you that I will be eating this, but I'm going to go eat it whilst I'm watching the World Cup. It's currently France versus Spain. So 2 cookies done and dusted, and we are now on to tiramisu. As I said, I'll watch that during the World Cup game, but I will post proof that I consumed it as well.
And that is the tiramisu finished.
Which gets us over the 10,000 calorie mark and successfully completes the 10,000 calorie challenge. There are some notable omissions to today's food. So one is energy drinks. I did miss out on getting a Monster. The second one is alcohol.
I know some people also have an alcoholic drink on the back of a work day or in your week. And again, could be an easy source of 200-300 calories per drink, potentially, depending on what you're drinking. That can easily become 2 or 3 bottles and therefore 5, 6, 700 calories without really trying. So that would also be another area to consider if you are trying to look at your diet overall, is that alcohol consumption and how frequent is that in your week. Thanks for being here. I hope it was helpful, a little bit educational, and at least partly fun to watch. I certainly enjoyed it on the whole myself, and I just want to thank you for watching. If you consider liking, subscribing, or commenting below, I'd really appreciate it as I try and grow this channel and get more help out there to healthcare professionals trying to improve their own health, fitness, and nutrition. Thanks for watching. I'm Tom, and I'll see you on the next one.